Hi guys, it's Christina from Blossom and Root. Today I would like to tell you about how I am approaching history in the elementary years with my daughters and how I go about planning each unit within that. So first of all, after debating for many months about how to do this, I ultimately decided that I wanted to cover every year. I wanted to cover American history for the first half of the year and world history for the second half of the year. Both cycles will move in order, like in a timeline from the beginning to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. So we're moving forward through history in two different cycles, if that makes sense. So this first year, for example, we will be covering in the first half of the year Native American history pre-European arrival, and then we will be covering the first colonists and the Mayflower. So I'm skipping early exploration era stuff to cover in world history later on down the road. My goal this first year is just to get my two daughters familiar with the stories associated with that period in American history. The second half of the year, we're going to study ancient cultures. So we'll cover ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, ancient Rome, a little bit of ancient Aztec culture, a little bit of ancient Chinese culture, and hopefully a little bit of ancient India too. So we'll see, but that's my goal. So when I was trying to decide what to use for history and the approach that I wanted to use, of course, I was inspired mostly by Charlotte Mason. That is the predominant influence in our homeschool, and that means books. So the foundation of what we'll cover with history is through books, and we do two different baskets. We do one in the morning and one in the evening at bedtime, and readings that are concerning history and geography we put in the bedtime basket. So all the books that I choose to use for history and geography, we really just read those at bedtime. And then occasionally we'll spend a day doing fun activities or going on a field trip. But I don't do excessive planning. I don't try to dedicate school time during the day to history on a regular basis. I would rather we have it there every single night while we're reading through our stories, and occasionally add a day where we're exploring a little bit deeper. I keep it really casual because our homeschool is already pretty full of lots of things, and I don't want me to get overwhelmed. I don't want my daughters to get overwhelmed. I want it to be really delightful and gentle introduction to history in these early years. So books are our foundation, and that is where I spend the majority of my planning time, is simply gathering up books and resources that I want to use. So I give myself a few months usually to get all of those together. I use the library, I use Amazon, thriftbooks.com, the teacher supply store that's in Denver, which I love, called The Bookies. That's a really great place to go and look for things organized by periods of history. So it makes my life a lot easier, and then I can actually see in the books too. So that's where we get the majority of our resources. I try to pick out enough books for each unit to cover 5 nights a week of reading. We spend about 10 to 15 minutes on the history part of our bedtime basket each night, and it's working really well so far. I'll link below to a video where I cover what we did for our Native American history unit, so you can kind of get an idea of the resources that I chose to use and how we went about doing them. So books are the foundation of what we do for history. The second thing I really like to incorporate when we're studying history are videos. For some eras this will be easier. For other eras it is much harder. It was really hard for the Native American unit to find videos that were accurate but not intense, like too intense for early elementary. So for some units we'll be able to incorporate more, and for others it'll be much less. So videos is another thing that I like to use when I'm planning out what we're going to do. And then the third big thing is field trips. We love taking field trips. We love doing anything where we get to learn outside of the house. So I try to find opportunities, and I just make a little list so that when we have a day come up where we want to do something for history, I can say, let's go do this. Let's go check out this exhibit, or let's go to this national monument, or whatever. So we get to go outside of the house and learn outside of the house as well. Another thing that I like to incorporate occasionally but very casually are projects and activities. We don't do a ton of these, honestly. Maybe once every couple weeks we'll throw in a day where we do something like that. But I can get really overwhelmed if I try to do too many projects with all these different things. You have to go to stores and buy all the pieces and the parts. And like I said, we already have a lot going on in our homeschool, and I feel like that would be a little too much this early in the game. So I keep those to a minimum. I keep them pretty casual. I just save them on Pinterest. And then, like I said, when we have a day come up where we want to spend more time on history, I go, hey, well, let's build a pyramid out of Legos or whatever, you know? So I keep it really casual. And then the last thing is maps. Now we save most of our map work for geography, but I did find this great book called When on Earth, and it's really cool. It has maps that are based on history. So for whatever era we're studying, we can pull up a page that's relevant to that era. So this one is 15th century America, and Americas, and it shows what was going on at that time in history. So this was pretty much the only page that was relevant to the last unit we did. But as we get into ancient history, and next year when we get into medieval history and stuff, this will come in handy more often. So that is that. I already talked about how I'm doing 2 concurrent cycles, but I didn't talk about how long each cycle lasts. So I really like the idea of a 4-year history cycle, so that is probably what we're going to stick with for both world history and American history. I just feel like that's a good sweet spot number, because that means they'll hit it each period 3 times by the time they graduate. And I like that, because you can go a little bit deeper each time into that era, and the things that are not age appropriate now, for example, we can cover later on down the road and get a little bit deeper into that more intense material. For this first cycle, the first 4 years, I'm really trying to keep it very casual, very light, and just enjoyable and delightful, with no stress, no pressure, no busy work, not a lot of things that my girls have to feel like worried about completing. I just want it to be a time of exploration and hearing a great story. So that is how I am approaching history for the elementary years. So a huge element of my goal for covering history for my children, and this applies to all 12 years of homeschool that we have planned ahead, is educating myself. So I went to public school, which means I did not have a very good history education, with the exception of the history of theater class I took in college, which was amazing. Thank you, Penny. And the world history class I took my senior year. With that being said, I felt like when I started homeschooling, I didn't know enough about history to feel confident in teaching my daughters, because history is a really important topic to me, and I want to do right by my kids and teach them the right way. So my husband and I have lots of great plans for when they get older and we can do documentary-based education, but for now, I needed to get up to snuff on the topics that we were going to be covering. So I found a couple of resources, and these would be really great if you have older kids who are maybe in middle school or even high school, to use in your own homeschool. They are not really appropriate for early elementary, but they did help me to learn a lot so that I at least felt equipped as a teacher going into this topic. So 2 of the best resources I found, and I found some really good ones, were Howard Zinn's Young People's History of the United States. Now, we also own a People's History of the United States, which is the adult version of this, although they're quite different. The other one goes a lot more into depth on certain things, and this one has much more of a focus on younger people's lives. So this is really good. I learned a lot reading this that I did not know, and it's really good. It's a really good book. So I highly recommend this resource. These are also really good. Joy Hakim's entire History of Us series. I have the first several, but these 2 were the ones that applied to this year. So I went through and I marked things and took notes and just made sure that I had a really firm understanding of this period of history before I started to teach it, even though I'm really not reading from it at all to my children at this point. And a lot of the material that's covered in it is not stuff that we necessarily are covering, but I feel a lot more confident about going into these topics having read these books. So these are great. I can't remember how many are in her series. There's a lot. I think there's 10, but they're fantastic. And like I said, if you have, I would say, you know, a really mature 4th grader, 5th grader, definitely middle schooler, these would be a really good spine to use. And they could definitely just read it themselves and get a lot from them. Same with this. But this one does, I'm not gonna lie, this one can be intense. So probably not a good choice for really sensitive kids until they're older. That's the nature of this particular subject. So that is how we are covering history. And I really appreciate you tuning into this video. If you are enjoying the content that I'm supplying on this channel, please hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the new videos that are coming out. I'm really making an effort to get more videos to you so that we can support each other in this great homeschool journey that we're on. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye for now.